Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here tonight, and for letting me go first. I have chemo brain, so I might take a side quest on my story if I forget where I'm going at any point. I have bullet points to help me get there, but who knows how we'll off-road today. But I like things off-kilter, asymmetrical, and interrupting cow moo. I have chemo brain, the cognitive changes from chemotherapy due to cancer that I had 10 years ago. And usually upon saying that, what I think of as just a basic statement, people go, so everything's okay right now? Everything's okay right now, they want to know. And that's a really complicated thing to answer. And it's complicated, so thank you for asking. Because I've had 2 recurrences of the bone cancer that led to my amputation and the chemo brain as well. And in both times, I earned lung surgeries called wedge resections. And I love my surgeon. When I was getting ready for my second lung surgery, we were talking about scars and recovery time. And my surgeon actually told me that she had gotten better at the procedure. So she thought my recovery time would be a lot faster this time around. And so what I want to tell you is, though my book is called Against Techno-Ableism, I'm not against medical advancements or better technology. I thought it was great that my recovery time might be less after my lung surgery. And I'm here to tell you something that I think is important and that I don't necessarily like. But my body is bold. It doesn't half-ass any drama, as you might have imagined now. And it reads to many bold like a caution sign or like tape around a crime scene. My body is bold as I'm pulled out of line to be swabbed down and patted down by TSA. A body like mine deserves more scrutiny, policing, questions like, what happened here? Gesturing at my body. And people think this sometimes. Sometimes they say it rudely aloud, or sometimes they offer this question as a stare. What happened here? They want, in the words of Donkey from Shrek, to swap some manly stories with me. Or sometimes parents will point to me in public and say to their child, this is what happens if you don't eat vegetables. Right, they want to hear a story about a shark attack, something that I did to deserve, deserve the body that I have, right? The question of what happened is so loaded here. And my body calls for it. And when I breathe too closely to any healthcare facility, they immediately give me a type of jewelry that some of you may or may not be familiar with. And it is why I brought my special sign from the back room today. It's that they slap a bracelet on me that reads fall risk. And a fall risk bracelet looks a lot like the tape at a crime scene. It is yellow with the exact same lettering. This tape that they slap around me, and they make it tight enough so I can't just scooch out of it, it reads in black lettering over yellow, fall risk. And it feels like a crime scene tape too. This highlighter yellow calling attention to me. And it happens whether I'm there for a 10-minute x-ray in which I have bounded into the imaging center by myself, or if I'm there for several days of staying in the same room to get some sort of treatment. And the thing is, everyone is a fall risk. I really like my interior design friend who tells me statistics about how many people die falling downstairs each year. I said this to someone in an elevator last night. We were going to a show, and someone noticed my body. It was bold enough that someone from security said, hey, you can go that way and use the secret elevator with all the other disabled people. So I was so excited, and we get into the tiny box, and I say to my other disabled people, do you know how many people die falling downstairs each year? And let me tell you, this is a hit with the right crowd. because immediately we are all friends, holding our canes together as we move in this box. And the woman who had a cane next to me goes, "I like you, we could be friends." And that is a good line. My friend who gave me the statistics around falling downstairs is non-disabled, but she swears she'd never live in a 2-story home given what she knows. And she understands the vibe I'm looking for in friendship, for sure, where we affirm each other's worries, and that works out well. And the thing is, it doesn't matter if I myself or bold am not with a body like this. It can be bold where I'm not. And the thing is, I have fallen. Every leg amputee will, and a lot of new arm amputees will. Congenital arm amputees are fine. But if your weight is newly redistributed and you go to run for the first time after your arm amputation, you're keeling over to the side, right? These are weights on the side of you. Surprise. Make it educational, they said. These are weights. But every leg amputee will fall. But they don't really like it when you fall in the hospital. I spent a lot of different weeks in hospitals getting chemo. During one of my local hospital weeks, getting some really awful junk. It was a week-long stay. I'd start feeling relatively good, and then they would poison me until it was time for me to leave and get poisoned again the next week. And one of the effects that I was having at this point, this was after my amputation, which was sort of mid-cycle in the sort of like, I got a few months of chemotherapy, I get an amputation, and then I get some more months of chemotherapy. Great. It was after my amputation. And I was at my local hospital. Most of mine was far away, but it was the easier compounds for them to administer at my local hospital. And I had with me, as a new amputee, one of the very static, very ugly looking walkers, right? So it's 4 on the floor, it's a static frame, it's considered the most safe. It is what people start out with in terms of mobility devices. And of course, to walk on that as a leg amputee, you're basically the worm of busy town, you know, where you're going up, you're pushing, and then you bear all your weight through your arms, and then you go back down and it's on your leg. And I was using this walker, and the thing is, the compound that I was getting that week was one that was causing little tremors in my hands. And so I could feel the tremors, but I thought I was just losing my mind. I thought my body was fine, and that this little burst of electricity was something that I was experiencing as sort of a hallucination, because I was hallucinating on this chemotherapy as well. At one point, all the objects in the room were singing to me, and I called my husband at 2 a.m. and I said, "All the objects in the room are singing to me. Could you come get me?" And he was really angry at me for waking him up at 2 a.m. for that. But indeed, I was trying to go to the bathroom with the static walker. And it's not a gnarly war story. People like grisly stories. I just fell on my ass, which was well padded enough that it was just awkward. I was like, I tremored as I'm using this thing, as I'm going on the up. I tremor at just the wrong time. I fall on my butt. The nurse comes in at just the wrong point, because it's not good when patients fall. And I am getting up with my walker and my bed and everything, and she looks full of fear as she looks at me getting up, even though leg amputees are going to fall. They have to teach us how to get up. This is a normal part of things. And I would say that the look of fear in her eyes was the worst part, until I made it worse, which is that I was going to try to explain to her how I had just fallen. And so I was showing her by using my walker again, and I fell again in exactly the same way. And she got to see me, witness me fall. And I was completely unhurt, just on my bottom. And I'm sure she had to fill out a lot of paperwork that day. Right, this was a very bad day for her at work, and I'm sure she was erasing the sign down by the nurse's station, and they were setting it back to 0 on days without falling on that floor. I felt so bad about that aspect. But I learned the honor and horror of having to be supervised to use the bathroom from then on, having to hit that call button and wait. And I had to pee a lot, because when you're getting chemotherapy, they are just running water through you so that you can protect your kidneys and process everything as quickly as possible. So they are filling me full of water, and now I have to press this call button to get anyone to come. And then, because if I'm sitting down on the toilet, someone else calls, they'll just leave me on the toilet. And they'll be like, don't get up. And I'm like, okay, here I am. I'm just gonna sit on the toilet for a while. And so leaving me for an unknown period of time. Hopefully they remember me because there's no call button in the bathroom. And the thing is, at home, I had used a rollator, right? When I say rollator, I describe what this is in my book, plug for the book. But it is a walker, but it has rolling wheels. But part of it also has these handlebars that sort of have just like a sliver of plastic that goes underneath your thumb. And if I was having a tremor, I wouldn't fall because the tremor's quick. My hand was supported with this object that was called more dangerous than this very static hospital walker. When I would have a tremor, things were supported enough under my hand. And what I want to say is that there are different affordances to different devices and challenges with maintenance and acquisition that most people in healthcare have no idea about. Most people have no idea about in general. And the thing is, I had to find this out the hard way. It was a lot harder for that nurse, but I had to find out the hard way that disabled people were going to be a much better resource for like what would actually help with my embodiment moving forward. What sort of devices they liked and used now that I was one of them were more relevant than ever. And the thing is, we know we're going to have a disabled future, right? I mean that for every one of you personally. This is a threat. But I also mean it in a sort of cosmic way, right? We have changing weather patterns due to climate change, right? Greater numbers of natural disasters. I mean, long COVID will become something that we continue to talk about for decades. But even things like Lyme disease and malaria are changing, like where they can be diagnosed, right? With changing weather means we get new disabling conditions. Also, even if we lived our greatest science fiction fantasies and got off this rock, everyone is disabled in space. It's not our environmental niche. And even going to space, I mean, astronauts have changes to vision, osteoporosis, all of these exciting things that we might see as disabled people as well. So it's worth planning and listening to disabled people who might have something to say about how the world ought to be and what devices and systems we should value. And I know that being bold isn't a thing I want to be or not, right? This isn't a question, right? People read me as bold. It becomes all the more important as a disabled person to getting the right things, to engaging in complaint, right? If someone goes to their prosthetist and the leg doesn't fit right, and you walk out because you want to be a nice disabled person, right? You want to say, oh, thank you, and leave with your object. It's actually usually an object that won't work for you. You have to learn how to be bold in order not to be bulldozed in a particular way. And so when I'm thinking about these things, I think it's key that we work on an admittedly disabled future, and one that builds infrastructure that includes us. And I think it's time to boldly go, whether it's into the bathroom safely by oneself or into a disability-forward future that's ready for a realistic vision of a surely disabled future. All right, now that I've told you my story, I'm going to heed this caution sign as I get down these stairs. But thank you for hosting me this evening.